Many of you who know me and have been following my content for a while will know that I am pretty anti-coding bootcamp. I'm a self-taught programmer. I learned all on my own using online resources, mostly for free or fairly cheap, and I have major trust issues with coding bootcamps. While maybe in the past they used to be good and provided a lot of value, especially when they were in person, in recent years, coding bootcamps have been popping up out of the woodwork left and right. They offer online curriculums and are fairly watered down. They're known to fluff their numbers and lie about placement rates. Also, these bootcamps will hire their own students in order to help those numbers look better as well. And they also try to lure you in with shady income share agreements to sign up. I've done videos about bootcamps before and a lot of reasons why I think they're not good. I've also talked about bootcamps that have gone through lawsuits because of their false claims. In the past, I've also interviewed students who attended some of these bootcamps and had to deal with some of those lawsuits and a lot of the issues that I have talked about in previous videos. I just want to talk about how you should actually just avoid bootcamps at all costs in 2024. And if you decide to go against that advice, you should definitely research whatever bootcamp that you're considering because it's looking pretty bad out there for coding bootcamps. And for the sake of getting that point across, I'm going to share a lot of Reddit posts that I have come across in the last couple months that I think will be valuable to anyone who is thinking about going to a boot camp, because there are people who are sharing their personal experiences with the current situation of coding boot camps. I just want to do this as a public service announcement and let you know, buyer beware if you're thinking about attending a coding boot camp now or in the near future. All right, let's get into some of these Reddit posts that I have saved here and talk about some of the things that they're mentioning in them. All right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is this one that is from 2 months ago, and it's in the Coding Bootcamp subreddit. The title of this post is "Only 2 of 21 of my cohort have found employment 8 months later. I graduated a coding bootcamp in March of this year. I put in probably 60 hours a week during my bootcamp working my ass off, and 6 hours every day applying, working on projects, and learning until I finally found a job 3 months ago. Almost 6 months post bootcamp. So far, only myself and one of my classmates who was absolutely brilliant have found a job. And this was a dude who was able to do leak code mediums 2 weeks into our class." If you're not familiar with what leak code is, it's a way to practice coding algorithms and coding problems, which a lot of companies will assess you based on some of those algorithms. So it's good practice. And if you're able to do leak code, that it's usually a sign that you've got a pretty good understanding of programming. And leak code mediums are pretty impressive because I personally am not good at algorithms, and I can probably do some leak code easies and maybe a few mediums. If this friend of his who was also able to land the job was doing leak code mediums 2 weeks into the boot camp, that's impressive. He goes on to say, "It honestly hurts that the majority of these people I studied with and grinded with have completely given up. We used to have an active group chat with all of us, and at this point, no one even talks anymore. Last I heard, some were even going back to bartending or retail jobs. 9.5% of my class was able to find employment almost 1 year later. This is the market we live in right now." It says a lot about the market, but it also says a lot about how these coding boot camps lie about their placement percentages. It's just what it is. While the market isn't great, these boot camps are just churning out students, dumping a bunch of inexperienced people who just complete a 3-month or 6-month coding boot camp with no real experience into the job market and expect them to do well. Let's go to the next post that I have saved here. So this post was actually from the founder of New Camp. And what's interesting is that New Camp is a boot camp that I talked about years ago, and this person actually reached out to me a few times on social media and asked me if I might be interested in working for them at the time. And I don't know them personally. I never really talked to them beyond that. I wasn't interested in working in a boot camp, and I believe that their curriculum was more of a self-taught with a little bit of hand-holding from what they were offering. Not well versed in their business model or how they ran their boot camp, but I did know about them when they were out. And this post here is talking about how coding boot camps are dead. Now what? From a boot camp founder and CEO. There's no point in denying that the new reality of getting a job in tech is quite harsh. Many graduates are facing an uphill battle in finding a rewarding job. The economic landscape is challenging, and as a result, the health and reputation of coding boot camps have been mixed at best. So it may be true that coding boot camps are dead, but then what comes next? With this question in mind, for the past 12 weeks, the New Camp team and I have been exploring how AI can transform learning experiences. We're not claiming to have the perfect system, but we are excited to share our latest experiment with this community and gathering your feedback. We're experimenting with the concept in AGI school, a school operated autonomously by an AGI. Our first attempt is the creation of a course titled Eloquent JavaScript, entirely created by AI. This course is based on the book of the same name and includes AI generation lessons, video lectures, coding exercises, quizzes, and assignments. To make this happen, we developed a tool internally called AI Producer, capable of ingesting books and producing elaborate course material as an output. I remember the first time reading this post and just having some like red flag feelings about it. And then reading the comments, they seem to feel a lot of the same sentiment that I was feeling. And it sounds a lot like they're trying to take a popular book, because if you've learned JavaScript, you've come across Eloquent JavaScript before. It's a very popular book. You've probably seen the book before. It stands out a lot. It's a yellow book with like a chicken or a bird on the cover of it. And the fact that they're taking a book, feeding it through probably ChatGPT, and then trying to make courses out of it feels a lot like plagiarism. It also feels like there might be some copyright infringement there. They're offering it for free, but remember, kids, nothing in this world is free. And it seems like they're trying to figure out a way to use AI while still getting customers, so then maybe when things pick up, they can start their boot camp up again. They're also naming their AI tutor that they're going to create Astro, which is the name of a very popular framework right now that's up and coming. They're titling the course the same name as the book, which I feel they're doing that for either SEO purposes or to confuse newcomers and make them think that they're associated with this book, but in fact they're not. Maybe they're trying to get around it by offering it for free to not run into any issues where it comes to getting sued. But all the comments kind of say the same thing. I thought when I read this, sounds like you're going to get your ass sued off by those book authors. Sounds exploitative at the least. Traditional boot camps don't work, so try something with AI in the name. Yeah, this has AI hype snake oil written all over it. Our business models are dying. Quick, jazz it up with AI buzzwords. And then somebody says blockchain. It's funny because I've made videos joking about how YouTubers who try to jump on all the buzzwords and trendy stuff, and I remember throwing in blockchain in there as a joke. So this person has a similar sense of humor. And then, of course, the OP, the former CEO of New Camp, who posted this, is trying to defend himself. And he's saying that the book is under Creative Commons, and that I'm sure he's trying to find ways to use this to his benefit. You know, everyone is kind of fighting in the chat. Again, I don't know. It seems a little shady to me. Just something I wanted to call out. Let's go to the next post that I have saved here. I've got a bunch of them, and it just goes to show you that there's so many of them. And the fact that so many of these kept popping up and I kept seeing them and I kept reading them and I kept saving them. And it was just like, man, this must be a sign of the times. Finally, boot camps are starting to implode. Here's one that says, a response to don't waste your money on boot camps, get a degree. So I want to go to the original post first, because I don't know if I remember seeing this original post or if I had it saved or not. I might have seen it and not saved it. Here's the post. It's also from like 2 months ago, and it says, don't waste your money on a boot camp, get a degree. This whole boot camp ship has sailed. Folks, it's over. There was a short period of time between 2014 and 2020 where you could feasibly get a job without any degree or credential, but a boot camp might help. Employers stopped requiring degrees, even Google, Alphabet. That made hiring people from non-traditional coding backgrounds trendy. I got to kind of agree with them. You know, at the time when I learned how to code and got a job, my first job was in 2017, and I started learning how to code around 2016. So I was right in the middle of that, and it was better times. And even up to 2020, and a little bit into 2021, like things weren't as bad as they are now in the job market. And I do believe that markets go up and down. I do believe that seasons change, and we might just be in a bad market right now, and it'll probably get better. But it's just going to be a lot harder to get a job like it was a few years back. And it might take a while before the market bounces back. That's just the reality of things. So let me continue this. It says, and now it's over. Since the beginning of 2021, like I was just saying, employers have all turned their degree requirements back on and let go of their high-paid tech recruiters. The pandemic did not usher in the remote work revolution. Corporate real estate investments dictated the return to office. So now you need a degree and you need to live in an area with hiring companies all over again, with all the high rents it entails. I would say this definitely pertains more to someone who might be new. If you've got some experience, it's probably easier for you to get a remote job, but there's a lot of truth in that last statement because a lot of these big corporations do want people back in office. They've been pushing for it for a while now, and since the pandemic is over, they're trying to get you back in there because they're suffering from real estate losses and they don't want these empty office buildings and they don't want these empty downtowns because it's affecting the real estate market and it's affecting the economy in worse ways as well. And that's why they're trying to get us back into the office, which I've always been totally against. And I've also talked about that stuff in previous videos. If you're still interested in becoming a dev, do it, but don't fall for the bootcamp scam. You can get transferable college credits cheap through Sophia and study.com. Western Governors University has a great CS program if you're motivated and they accept transfer credits from previous sites I mentioned. Or pay more at a prestigious school if you really want. The point is, boot camps aren't worth it, and they were only worth it for a short time. This person starts getting pretty grim. He's like, we are in the death throes. I only bring up WGU because it was the cheapest alternative. I know off the top of my head. I'm sure there's others, but the point is that employers are looking for CS degrees. And again, period, just go and look at some of the job postings. I'll argue that they've always looked for CS degrees. And even when they stopped requiring them, they still had them in their job postings because a job posting and a job description is a wish list, and every employer is going to want you to have a CS degree. Doesn't mean that you can't get hired without one, but it is harder to get hired without one, especially now, because it's an employer's market. A few years ago, it was an employee's market. A few years ago, I was getting emails from recruiters all the time, and that has stopped and slowed down quite a bit. It's the beginning of the year. They might start hiring again, and that might start to change a little bit, but who knows? This person is definitely on the pessimistic side, to say the least. I attended a $20,000 boot camp years ago, and its slimy executive director is coming around here to continue to try to talk people into keeping his cash cow afloat. But the entire market has shifted, and you can get a CS degree for cheaper than a well-reputed boot camp that can't guarantee you a job. Yeah, but a CS degree takes a lot more time than a boot camp. I'm not an advocate for boot camps, but there's reasons why people go to boot camps, and it's also a lot of the same reasons why people go self-taught. So it's hard to compare it because you're not comparing apples to apples when you're saying a CS degree and a boot camp. Even though a CS degree can be cheaper, it's a lot more time to get one. So you got to keep that in mind. Don't fall for boot camps. Get a degree. That's the barrier to entry. Boot camp credentials don't mean a thing. I didn't really get whether or not this person who posted this is working in the field. They said they went to a boot camp. I don't know whether or not they actually work as a developer. They might have been someone who went to a boot camp and just never got a job. You always got to be careful of the advice and information you get on Reddit. And sometimes these are just big rants, but I mean, there's still some value in what this person's saying because I do agree with a lot of it. So this is the response to that post. It said the Reddit app suggested this for me, and this is a rant I've kind of toyed with in my head and for some time. Too long, didn't read. Coding boot camps are still as viable as they ever were, which is not that very viable for the vast majority of people. I love the fine print there. This is a really long post, and I've got other ones I want to get through, so I don't want to go through every single one of this guy's bullets and read everything, but I'll just read the bullet points that he posted. One of them was that bootcamp credentials meant nothing. He's saying that even back then, in the golden era between 2014 and 2018, because he says that the OP stretches it to 2020, but they couldn't speak for that. They said even back then, it was 50-50 if recruiters had even heard of a coding bootcamp before, and even the top two boot Bootcamps, Hack Reactor, and App Academy weren't known, and they were kind of unheard of during interviews, and they never got like extra points for it. They go on to the next bullet points of saying like why Bootcamp started getting a bad rep or a worse rep. Bootcamps had never had a good rep to begin with, they say, and at least not amongst the employers in the Bay. It was neutral at best, and this person still got rejected from phone screenings because they didn't have a degree. There was a lot of boot camps that kind of popped up, and they used to have strict admissions criteria, but then they started laxing their admissions to let more people in. Obviously, those boot camps were doing that because they wanted to make money, and if they have too strict of criteria, then they can't get as many customers. And then he says that the anyone can learn how to code sentiment is the problem here. He says coding is hard. It gets very confusing because within the circle of people who are employed and have experience, coding is not that hard. It's true because it's one of those genius complexes or wisdom complex, right? Because when you've done this for such a long time, things start to make sense, and you realize that it's not that hard once you've done it for a while. But for most beginners and most people who have never written a line of code in their lives and get into it for the first time, it is extremely hard. But once you kind of get over that initial hump and things start to click and make sense, and you start to do this for a while, it's not as hard, and it does get easier. And they go on to say that coding is hard. Many people will try and fail and give up. This is a really long post. And then their third and final bullet point was, I recommend a CS degree as well. Boot camps, shady as they are way more practical for most life situations. CS degrees take a lot of time to get, and it's not for people who already have established careers and families and responsibilities, because you have to dedicate so much time to getting a degree that boot camps made sense for a lot of people that were trying to make that switch, because the fact that if you have responsibilities, you can dedicate some time to going to a boot camp, or you can even say, hey, I'll take 3 months off from my career and I have some savings saved up that I can pay for my bills while I do this boot camp, or I can do a boot camp on my part-time for 3 months or 6 months or however long, rather than saying, hey, I'm going to go back to college and get a CS degree that's going to take me 2 to 4 years, right? It's just more realistic for most people to do boot camps. And I think that's a lot of what this person is trying to say here, that boot camps are still more practical for most life situations. As I'm reading through this, I kind of remember glancing through this post and remembering this, right? And his conclusion is what I tell a lot of people. This person is like spot on. Like, we totally kind of have the same saying. If you're 18, get a computer science degree, then learn web development on your own and make a to-do app that will store your task in a database, make it look pretty with React and CSS, and then go and get your job. But if you're 25 plus, getting a CS degree is a bad idea for a lot of factors, many of which I probably just mentioned. And they have a second, too long didn't read, and what boot camps do and don't do for you. That this was a really good post, and the OP was LeJohn Brams 117. This was a really good post and a really good response to that previous post, because they made a lot of good points, and I agree with pretty much all of it. All right, let's see what else I have saved up here about boot camps. Here's another post. It talks about major changes in App Academy's program, right? They just canceled class for today, back tomorrow. Here's what they posted in their blog. The bullet points from that is, it sounds like the New York campus is closing and everything moves online. San Francisco closed already last month. Starting the online cohort less often. Firing 31% of the staff over a 1-year time frame. More AI, new prep products, and changes are for future cohorts, but not current students. As we were just reading in that last post, App Academy is one of like the OG boot camps, and even they can't stay afloat in this economy. And it just goes to show you that a lot of them are starting to cut back, and a lot of them are trying to stay afloat, because at the end of the day, while many of them want to say that they're really passionate about getting people jobs and they really care about that stuff, it's a business. And if they're not making money and students aren't getting placed, things aren't going to go well for them, and they're going to have to cut their losses. They're going to have to fire people. They're going to have to start using AI like a lot of other companies are doing for different things. And it just goes to show you that things aren't looking well. There's a blog post posted on November 15th. It just talks about what App Academy is going through with their new changes coming up, which don't look good for them. And honestly, I think it doesn't look good for many boot camps out there. Here's another one from a month ago, right? And they're asking what happens to boot camp graduates who ended up as TAs. A lot of boot camps will hire their own students as TAs in order to get them placed and pay them a very crappy wage so that they can make some of their money back by hiring their own students and then saying that they placed them. This is common practice. If you research boot camps, you'll see that many of them do it. I think fine, it's good. The person gets hired, but at the same time, I think it's they exploit them a little bit because they're able to hire them a lot cheaper. A lot of these people are desperate to get out. They make relationships with the boot camps because they're students there. They feel like they're getting a good deal getting hired. They feel like, oh, hey, I can give back and I can teach the people that are coming up like others taught me. But really, I think it's just a way for boot camps to get cheap labor out of the people that they taught and then fluff their numbers a bit. So I met this one person who graduated a boot camp, and after several months, he never got a programming job, and his boot camp never hired him, but he got hired by another boot camp to become a TA. Even if your boot camp hired you, how did you end up being a TA forever? So some of the responses are, my brother knows a person who paid $17,780 to attend Hack Reactor, a paid coding boot camp on site in San Francisco. He could not find a paid software engineer job, so he became a TA at another coding boot camp. His TA job ended, so he tried looking for a paid software engineer jobs as well as other coding boot camp TA jobs. He could not find any job at all. So he went to Holberton School, which is a paid coding boot camp that costs $85,000. Don't ever pay $85,000 for anything unless it's a house or a really nice car and you're rich, because that's ridiculous. After he finished Holberton School, he could not find any other paid job at all, so he has been unemployed for like 2 years. He's in a lot of debt. That's just crazy. I don't even know what to say to that. There's some of the comments. One person says, the fun fact, the school doesn't disclose pricing information up front, so most people wouldn't hear such unless they spoke to current students or graduates. The first year is $45,000 while the second year is $40,000. Whoa, that's nuts. They're taking advantage of people. And honestly, I mean, if you're signing any contract, you should really read through that contract, run it through ChatGPT, pay a lawyer. If you're signing up for something so expensive, a few $100s to have a contract review can save you a lot of money and debt in the future. That's just nuts. There's a lot of comments talking about how much boot camps are and how much college is, and just seeing like, you know, this person saying their college is $56K a year. It's just crazy. I've never even heard about that Holberton School. If you've heard of that school, tell me about it in the comments. If you think I should make a video about that, let me know, because I've never heard of it and I'd love to dig into it and see. Another post about the App Academy. Horrible experience of an App Academy graduate. I think I remember reading this one. This was less than a month ago. It says, using an alt because I honestly do fear retaliation from administration. Funny enough, because when I did the interview with the student who went to Lambda School, which is now Bloom Institute of Technology, and he first reached out to me and we talked a little bit before we did the interview. He was dealing with a lot of stuff, and he was worried about the same thing. He was worried about facing retaliation. Like, how are these schools running when people are scared of them? Like, are they doing mob tactics? Are they really like that scary where people are scared of retaliation? I know I've seen people who have gone through issues of like potentially getting sued if they talk about this stuff, and have also like tried to sue these schools. And it's crazy. And I honestly can't believe it happens. So they're saying some of you may have seen the recent layoffs by App Academy. 31% of the staff was laid off, including many of the career coaches, which we mentioned in that previous post. For people that have graduated now in the job search program, it means that many of them lose their coaches. Ironically, many of the coaches are now searching for a job, and existing coaches are even more overwhelmed with upwards of 50 people per coach. That's more students than a public school teacher. Basically, everything that you are required to do is enforced by their strike system. 10 strikes and you can be kicked out of the job search program, which isn't even helpful. With all $25K owed if you sign the ISA. Again, like I mentioned, those ISAs are tricky and they're shady. You got to be careful with them. You can be given a strike for not meeting your weekly job search quota, as well as not committing to GitHub enough. Most of the applications that you do don't lead to anything, and most of the students in the program are not receiving any interviews. This is made worse by the constant gaslighting done by some of the coaches who say that people that aren't getting interviews aren't working hard enough. In this economy, in this job market, it's not because you're not working hard enough. It's just because people are not interviewing as much because they're getting thousands of applicants. So you really have to be creme de la creme to get an interview, or just happen to apply for the right job in the right place at the right time to get an interview these days. That's just the reality of what the market is like right now. The actual career services are basically useless. Most of them are slideshows on how to make meaningless posts on LinkedIn, or someone reading a Bloomberg article of how the job market is improving. If you signed an income share agreement, you are signing up for 15 months of full-time job searching. So written into their ISA, that means that you have to job search for 15 months, which I get because they're trying to get their money back. But at the same time, it's funny how so many of these boot camps market these ISAs as hey, you only have to pay us back if you get a job because we really want you to learn how to code. But then in the fine print, it's like you need a job search for 15 months full time to meet your end of the bargain on this ISA. Students that paid up front, which didn't sign an ISA, were sent an email telling them that if they wished, they could opt out of receiving job search coaching. So they're like, well, if we already got your money, you don't need to do this job search coaching. This is only for the people that we haven't gotten paid from yet and signed ISAs, and we need to try to make sure that they get hired so we get paid. But if you paid up front, don't worry about the job search. It's cool, bro. There's also a clause in the email that says that if you didn't respond within a week, they would remove you from getting any job search assistance. That's so shady. I don't believe that an email can be a legally binding document like that, given the fact that like you're not signing it, you're not agreeing to that, and they probably put it in like tiny fine print so you can not see it. I mean, it's hard enough to unsubscribe for an email. You think they're going to make that stick out so that they have to keep giving you job coaching? Shady. These boot camps are just getting worse and worse, and now they're going to be even worse because they're struggling and they want to make money, because many of these have investors and many of them have to stay afloat. So it's going to get crazy out there. So this one, somebody posted the Bloom Institute of Technology's 2022 student outcome report. And that actually used to be Lambda School, which went through a whole bunch of bullshit and problems because they were doing shady tactics and people sued them, and they changed their name in order to try to look better, like a lot of companies do, and hopefully clear up some of that bad press and SEO that they had with their former name. I'm not going to get into the reports, but I'm just going to read some of the comments here that are kind of recent, because this is one of the more recent ones. And it mentions how can you start with 600 people, place 200 people, and then say you have an overall 80+% placement rate. And then the comments continue to elaborate on that. They said that only 250 out of those original 640 were counted as job addressable, whatever that means. Well, it looks like only half of the initial 600 people were eligible to graduate. That's pretty common. Unfortunately, a lot of the people failed. This other person mentions that Bloom Tech moved to a cohortless self-service platform with live lectures you opt into every week. 50% graduation is the ballpark of Springboard's public numbers as well. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that should be made clear to people. Instead of focusing how to get a job, people should focus on how to graduate, because graduating seems to be much harder. And once you do, getting a job seems more likely. And that makes sense. And I can see like why a lot of people would drop out of these things, because coding is hard and it's not easy. I feel like reading this one, since I didn't get into the actual articles, it's not that much value, and I don't want to like waste time on that one. So I'm going to look at which other ones I have here that I have saved, because I have so many of these saved. Like, it's not just a couple, it's so many of these posts that I have saved. And here's one that was pretty interesting, and it's the state of boot camps from a former employee. This person says, this is a throwaway account because I don't want my other account getting doxxed. I won't mention what boot camp I worked at. But they go on to say that 2022 and 23 has sucked extremely hard for boot camps. We have seen closures, staff reductions, an unpredictable and highly competitive job market. I used to work at one of the major boot camps and felt it was worthwhile to make a post for those who, for some reason, are still thinking about attending. So they say that they have met with over 10 people working in the space, different schools recently. Most folks are saying that their placement rates are around 20%-ish over the last few years. Now, is that 20% of total enrollments, 20% of graduating enrollments, 20% of job eligible people searching? Who knows? Given the lack of context and regulation in the industry, I would never trust any number. There has been more layoffs and staff reductions than what has been publicized across the industry. And a lot of major players have laid off folks and not made press releases. It's bad press. Why would they talk about that? Every time a company lays people off, they're all over Twitter and they're all over Reddit. And I mean, it makes sense for them not to want to talk about this stuff. But I'm glad that people are posting things like this so that these boot camps stay honest. Majority of people I have met really believe that their mission is helping adults change careers. I think there is often a profit/snake oil scammer mentality in this industry. The reality is education and the cost of quality is hell of expensive when you're trying to disrupt the monopoly of higher education. With that said, given that almost all companies are VC backed, the idealism of purpose is quickly changed to return of investment. What I keep saying, there's a lot of money involved here, and these companies, while they market themselves as trying to help people out, at the end of the day, investors have to get paid, CEOs have to get paid, staff has to get paid or laid off, and it's for-profit business. That's just capitalism, baby. Every school has a rags to riches story. Even self-taught programmers have plenty of rags to riches stories. There's a lot of people who don't make it. There's a lot of people who do make it. And, I'm one of those rags to riches stories when it comes to learning how to code. But it was a lot of hard work and it didn't happen overnight. And it's not easy. And it was rough. It was really rough. And it took me a lot of time, seriously. But, behind every overnight success, there's years and years of hard work behind it, right? If you can't sit down for 6 hours a day for a week or so and hammer out the Odin project, chances are coding and bootcamp space isn't for you. Coding bootcamps have actual curriculums that are going to make your ass read, research, and Google. Anyone and their mom can do a code-along style curriculum. I 100% agree with that. The Odin project is a free resource. The free code camp is a free resource. If you can't get through some of this free curriculum that they offer online, chances are you're not going to cut it at a boot camp because they're going to be a little bit more intense and you're going to have to spend a lot of time learning and researching and Googling your ass off like that person just said. And if for some reason you're still in the space thinking, I might YOLO this and try, here's what I would urge you to think about. Look for local or in-person learning. If I was to enroll in a bootcamp today or have my kids do it, I would only send them to something that has an in-person component. It's a lot easier to develop regional business partners than it is for everyone and their mom to compete with getting someone hired at Google. This predominantly is why I think colleges are still able to outpace bootcamps because of specified geographic targets. I'm not sure how much profit or nonprofit matters here, but both should be regulated locally somewhat. Agreed. In person is always going to be better than online, especially when you're new and getting started. I think that also pertains to your first job. Like you're going to probably learn a lot more in an in-person job if the rest of your team is in person and you can actually sit next to a senior developer and they can come help you when you need, or you can pair program. It's really important to be in person with a lot of these schools. You're just not going to learn as much online. Once you've got some experience, you can go remote and you can learn things online on your own. You can do it on your own as well if you don't have experience, but in person is always going to be better because you can actually get hands-on with someone who can help you. Cohort size matters. Lean towards something smaller. Agreed. I mean, that's the whole thing behind the problem with a lot of schools nowadays and public schools and just all schools in general. Teachers are overwhelmed by having too many students, and the more students you have, the harder it is to teach all of them, and the less one-on-one time you get with them. Smaller is better when you have cohort. Obviously, you don't want too small, but if you have a senior level developer, a mid-level developer leading the cohort and teaching, and you have a small group, then that's better because you just get more personal time with that mentor and it's going to benefit you more. You are going to have to work your ass off to network. I would encourage people in the market now to look locally and build connections. People aren't reading job applications. Recruiters are telling us that they're getting 1,000 plus applicants for junior positions. Granted, some of these people who are looking for visa extensions and whatnot. Look, I am someone who doesn't like networking. I don't like having to do that, but I did it a lot when I was learning how to code. I went to meetups and I got job opportunities because of it, and it helped me out a bunch. And there's that joke that developers only go to meetups when they're looking for a job, but it's true, especially if you're looking in your area and you're trying to get hired locally, or if you're trying to just find people who can help you and talk to and pick their brains. You have to get out there and network. It sucks. Many of us just like to sit behind a desk and write code, but the reality of it is networking goes a long way and you should do that. I still think this is a viable future for people. I think we saw several models of delivery come and go over the last 5 years, but honestly, that's what happens when you try to make a major change and disrupt the education market. If you were to look at community college completion rates, salaries after graduating, it's not that great. This is the main audience in boot camps target, and it's a difficult group of folks to serve because there are so many competing priorities. Rather than going to a coding boot camp, I would still say, like this person said, if you're thinking about going to a boot camp, try the Odin project, try free code camp, do some YouTube tutorials, try to build some stuff, see if you can actually sit through this stuff, because boot camps are going to be rough. You're going to pay a lot of money for them, and at the end of the day, it's not good. The last few posts that I have here is from a few days ago. One of them is about another boot camp that is closing called Epicodus, officially announced their closure to students on January 2nd and 3rd. And then there's another one here that is mentioning something about Code Up, which is a coding boot camp. The abandonment of this boot camp, Code Up, apparently just closed abruptly, and it seems like there was some students impacted by it. Also, one last note that I didn't really get into, but it had to do with this boot camp called La Wagon, and there's a ton of bad press about them, all about them fluffing their numbers, their completion rates, their placement rates, and they seem to be very, very shady as well. I know this is a long video. I don't know if you made it through the end of this video. I really wanted to just share everything I've seen in the last couple months about coding boot camps. I've always been very vocal about how I feel about them. I have a strong opinion towards them. I am a self-taught developer. I avoided going to a coding bootcamp because when I was learning how to code, I didn't have the time or the money to attend one. And that's back when coding bootcamps used to be in person and actually provided more value than what it seems that these new modern day bootcamps are doing with these online programs and these cohorts that are falling apart left and right. Again, if you're considering doing a boot camp now or in the near future, make sure that you do your own research. Make sure that you read those contracts. Make sure that you understand their ISA agreements. Make sure that you know what you're getting into, because there's a lot of them out there that are doing a disservice to a lot of people who are interested in just trying to make a career change and trying to better their lives. Again, not all of them are bad, but it's getting harder and harder to find a boot camp that is good and offers value and keeps their promises and actually is honest with all their numbers and their placement rates and really care about their students. All right, with all that said, I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed it or you found value in it, make sure you hit that like button, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.